hits you, not at the funeral, but on that ordinary Tuesday morning after, when you're standing in the kitchen holding 2 mugs of coffee, and then you realize you have no one to give the second one to. I'm Kevin James, a history teacher at South High School in Denver. Been in the same classroom for 2 years. Same window overlooking the parking lot. Same students who start the year thinking history is useless and end it either changed or at least smart enough to fake it. It's a quiet life, a good life, one I've always been content with because it was genuinely mine. But Sandra, she wasn't a quiet life. She was the most fascinating person I'd ever encountered. We met in 1995 at a faculty get-together when she was debating a philosophy professor about the ethics of inheritance. She had this specific, cheerful intensity, like she knew she was about to win before she even started. I introduced myself right at the moment the professor was clearly losing, because I've always had good instincts. She looked at me and said, "Are you planning to argue with me too?" And I said, "I'd need to know which side you want me to be on first." She laughed, and that was the beginning. We were different in a way that just worked. The kind of complementary differences that grow stronger with time, where each person completes what the other doesn't quite reach. Sandra had an entrepreneurial drive I never had. Businesses, consulting work, and later projects, which is really just a fancy word for work people don't want to explain over dinner. She traveled often, kept her professional life separate from our home life with the precision of someone who believed integration was overrated. I respected that. I respected her. I didn't ask the questions she didn't volunteer answers to. And that, as I'd come to learn in the week after she died, was both the smartest decision and the costliest one I'd ever made. September 16th, 4:47 p.m. The call came on the classroom phone, the one on the wall that barely rings anymore, which is why it startled me enough to send a pile of essays flying. It was Officer Greer from the Denver Police. A crash on I-25, southbound, near the University Boulevard off-ramp. A silver Lexus SUV, Sandra's plates. His voice had that professional, kind quality people use when they're about to deliver news you'll never be able to undo. "Mr. James, are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. We believe the driver was your wife." Paramedics arrived quickly, but the impact. That was all I really heard. Yes was the only word I had left. I called Frank Odom from the parking lot. He's been my best friend since we coached Little League in '03, the kind of guy who always answers no matter what time it is. "Kev, what happened?" "Sandra, there's been an accident." A pause. "How bad?" "Frank made it to the school in 18 minutes. I know because I counted, because counting gave my mind something else to latch onto, instead of the thing it kept trying to process." The next week was a blur. Not a fog exactly, but more like a series of intensely clear moments with all the transitions cut out. The flowers on the counter, the sound of Drew crying in the hallway, the weight of the pen as I signed the funeral home paperwork. But the hours between those moments, gone. Amber flew in from Seattle. Drew drove up from Colorado Springs. By Tuesday night, we were all in the Washington Park house, orbiting around our shared grief, touching base, then retreating into our private corners. The funeral was the 21st. Sandra had more friends than I realized, more than I even knew about, which is a phrase I'd come to understand differently later. The service was packed. The eulogies were heartfelt. I spoke last and kept it simple. She was brilliant. She was unexpectedly funny. She debated a philosophy professor the night I met her and won. And even after 30 years, I still wasn't sure if I'd ever fully matched her. People laughed. She would have wanted that. September 23rd, 9:14 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table with 1 cup of coffee, one because I'd started deliberately making just one now, retraining my own habits, when the doorbell rang. On the porch was a man in his 60s, gray suit, briefcase, the kind of official presentation that doesn't announce what kind of official it is. He introduced himself as Victor Paulson, a notary and estate administrator. "Mr. James, sorry for arriving without notice. I've been trying to reach you, but I understand, given the circumstances." "I haven't been checking messages," I said. "Come in." He sat across from me, opened his briefcase with practiced ease, and slid out a folder. Inside, a deed, a key card, and a notarized document. Your wife designated me to transfer a specific asset. She executed this 14 months ago with instructions to deliver it to you personally within 10 days of her passing. The transfer is automatic. No probate. It's titled directly to you. I looked at the key card, matte black with a small silver PH2 embossed on it. What asset? Spire Tower, 1600 Glenarm Place. The penthouse, unit PH2. 2 floors, around 3,200 square feet. Your wife bought it 8 years ago through an LLC. She transferred the sole ownership to you 14 months ago. I stared at the deed, then at the key card, then at my name printed in crisp legal type. She never mentioned this. Not once. Victor's expression was careful. I'm not here to interpret what she shared or didn't share. I can only confirm she was very deliberate in her planning. She wanted you to have this. Why wouldn't she tell me when she was alive? A pause. The kind that has an answer attached to it. I simply administered documents, Mr. James. What's inside the unit? That's not something I can help with. He left 15 minutes later. I sat with the key card and the deed, my coffee growing cold. Sandra, I thought, what did you do? Here's what I knew about Sandra's business trips, which is to say, almost nothing. Early on, about 15 years in, when her projects had gotten big enough, she was traveling 5 or 6 times a year. She'd sat me down and said, with typical clarity, Kevin, there are parts of my work I can't fully share. I'm not asking you to be okay with that. I'm asking you to trust me. In return, I promise you we're financially safe. I'm not doing anything illegal, and everything I do, I'm doing for us. I asked one question. Are you in danger? She said no. I believed her. I had 15 years of evidence backing that trust. I never asked again. And now, with a penthouse key on my kitchen table, I was starting to realize the trust had been deserved. But the not asking had left me alone at the edge of a very large unknown. I told Frank later that evening, at his Capitol Hill place, sat with a beer I wasn't drinking, and laid it all out. He listened, like he always does, and when I finished, he nodded at the key card on his coffee table. You haven't gone yet? No, it's been 4 days since the funeral. I'm not ready. What are you thinking? I'm thinking she had reasons for everything. Always did. I set the beer down. I want to know what I'm walking into before I walk in. You gonna sell it? Probably. I'm a high school teacher, Frank, and apparently a penthouse owner. He paused. Kevin, whatever's in there, she wanted you to have it. She planned it, documented it, made sure it got to you. She trusted you could handle it. I didn't know what was in PH2. Didn't know what I'd find when I unlocked that door. Didn't know my wife of 29 years had been more complicated and more intentional than I ever could have imagined. I drove home, made 1 cup of tea, sat in the kitchen, and looked at the key card. Sandra, I thought again, what did you build? Welcome back to Dad's powerful revenge. Grab some snacks, get comfortable, and know that every person in these stories had a chance to do the right thing. They just picked wrong. Drop a comment and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what's behind that door. Ruth Calloway's office is in Lodo, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and the kind of repurposed charm that expensive businesses like to have. I got there Tuesday morning and handed her the documents. She'd reviewed them already, sent them over at 11 p.m. and told me to come in at 9. Ruth is 58, direct, and doesn't waste time on showmanship. The transfer's clean, she said. The LLC is properly set up. Your ownership is valid. No liens, no disputes, no title issues. She looked up. The LLC has owned it for 8 years. Paid taxes, maintenance, assessments, all on time, with no debt. It was purchased outright. How much? Purchase price 8 years ago was $1.4 million. Current estimate? Around 2.1 to 2.3. I looked out at the Denver skyline. Ruth, I didn't know about any of this. I gathered. A pause. I'd recommend talking to the LLC's registered agent before you decide to sell. There might be context you need. Who is it? Carla Brine, listed as a business associate. Carla Brine. I'd never heard the name in 29 years. I'm going to see the penthouse first, I said. Of course. Kevin, whatever's in there, call me before you make any choices. Any of them. She handed me back the key card. Go see what she left you. The drive from Lodo to Spire Tower takes 6 minutes on a good morning. I know because I drove it twice. The first time I parked in a loading zone without noticing, had to circle back because my brain was elsewhere. The building is on Glenarm Place, a 42-story glass and steel tower from Denver's 2010s building boom. Lobby's not flashy, but it's not trying to be modest either. Doorman, secured parking, mirrors in the elevators, hallways that smell like good carpet. I'd never stepped foot inside. Tess Merrow, the building manager, met me in the lobby. She was professional, mid-40s, clearly briefed, because she offered condolences without my explaining why I was there. Mr. James, we're very sorry for your loss. We were all fond of Mrs. James. I stopped. She was here often? Tess's face shifted. But careful. She was a regular presence. We always respected her privacy. A pause. The penthouse is on 42. I can take you up, or you'd rather go alone? Alone. The elevator ride was 30 seconds of compression. The specific feeling of rising towards something you don't fully understand. The 42nd floor has 2 units. I stood at PH2, card in hand. She wanted you to have this, Frank had said. Whatever it is, she thought you could handle it. I swiped the card. The light turned green. The penthouse was, I registered it in fragments, floor-to-ceiling windows on the west wall, showing the front range. An open living area with elegant furniture. A kitchen better than any I'd ever used. Stairs to the upper level in the back corner. All that in 2 seconds. In the 3rd second I saw her. Sitting on the gray sectional, facing the mountains, was a woman I'd never met. Silver hair, reading glasses, a folder in her lap. She'd heard me come in and looked up. Not surprised exactly, but more like someone who'd been waiting for something they weren't sure would come. She stood up, slowly and deliberately. Mr. James, I'm Carla Brine. We stood there for a few seconds of charged stillness. How did you get in? Sandra gave me a key. I've had one for 8 years. I was collecting some documents before the unit transferred. I didn't know when you'd come. I should have called. I'm sorry. Who are you? She held the folder with both hands. I was Sandra's business partner. Primary partner. For the last 11 years. Consulting work, corporate strategy, the kind companies pay big fees for and don't advertise because it's sensitive. Her eyes were steady. Your wife was extraordinary at it. The best mind for organizational dynamics I've ever worked with. She used this place for work, for meetings, neutral ground, not client offices, not your home, her professional space. She paused. You didn't know. She told me you didn't know the specifics. Did she say why? She said you were the most honest, uncomplicated person she'd ever known. And she meant it as the highest compliment. Her work needed contained knowledge, and she didn't want to create worry you didn't deserve. I sat down. Tell me what she did, the actual work. Carla opened the folder. Corporate intelligence and transition strategy. When companies are in crisis, leadership shakeups, board disputes, hostile situations, they need someone who can come in without visible ties to any party. Sandra was that person. Pause. Only shadows melting into darkness. She could read an organization like no one else. The clients were Fortune 500 mostly. The fees matched. How significant? Because at this point I needed to understand what I was standing in. She slid a page across the coffee table. A financial summary. Sandra's LLC revenue, 11 years. I looked at the numbers, then looked again because the first glance needed verification. This is what she cleared annually in good years. The stakes were high. Discretion was absolute. I set the page down, looked at the mountains. She said we were financially safe. That was the understatement of a lifetime. If you're enjoying these stories, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps keep things going. Only a tiny percentage of people do, but it makes a huge difference. Thank you. Now let's keep moving, because we are nowhere near the end. Carla and I talked for 2 hours. She walked me through the work, the clients, not by name but by type. The pharmaceutical board in crisis, the regional bank merger fracturing along loyalty lines, the tech firm whose founder was being pushed out by a clueless board. Sandra had gone in, assessed, fixed, and moved on, year after year. She loved it. She said it was like the opposite of teaching. She solved new problems with the same toolkit every time. She looked at me. She was proud of you. She said you were her anchor. After she left, I opened the folder. Sandra's handwriting, the neat cursive she'd always used. Kevin, if you're reading this, I didn't get to explain myself. I'm sorry for all of it. The not telling, the compartments, the trips you accepted on faith. I kept it for my sake too. I needed something that was all mine, but it wasn't a rejection of you. You were always the one I chose. 30 years later, still you. Then the practical part. The financial summary. And a name, Gordon Hale. A silent partner in an adjacent LLC. Someone who'd contributed seed capital to early projects in exchange for a minority stake. The arrangement was legal. He'd been paid his returns. But she warned me, Gordon will contact you. He may say he has a claim on the penthouse. He doesn't. Call Conrad Marsh, he has the documentation. Do not engage with Gordon directly. She ended with, you've always been smarter than you think. I called Ruth. She had a sealed envelope waiting 6 months. Sandra said to open it only when you called from the penthouse. Why? She wanted you to have full context before seeing the portfolio's bottom line. I'm sitting down. Turn to page 3. I did, looked at the number. This is what I think it is? Combined LLC value, investments, the penthouse? Yes. Sandra was very successful, Kevin. That number doesn't belong in a high school teacher's life. What do I do? Call Conrad Marsh, today, and don't sign anything until you talk to him. Gordon Hale called at 4:30. I let it go to voicemail. Smooth, practiced condolences, mention of a long-standing arrangement he'd like to discuss. I sent it to Ruth and called Conrad Marsh. He was 60, corporate attorney, thorough, walked me through the Gordon situation in 45 minutes. The investment, the quarterly distributions, the signed termination acknowledgement from 18 months ago. He has no claim, Conrad said. His interest was fully liquidated, and he acknowledged it. Then why is he calling? He does this. Tests bereaved people who are disoriented and unfamiliar with documents. What do I do if he calls again? Give him my number. I called Gordon back the next day. Same smooth voice. I let him say his piece, then said, call Conrad Marsh. He has the documentation, including your signed termination acknowledgement. A long pause. His voice lost its warmth. I said and hung up. Amber and Drew joined a video call that evening. I told them everything. The penthouse, Carla, the LLC, Sandra's letter. I saved the number for last, after the context. When I told them, Drew sat silent. Then, Mom was doing all that the whole time, 11 years of the current work, some form of it longer. Amber was quiet, processing. Then, she wanted you to have the penthouse, not the LLC, not the accounts. She knew you'd need something solid, something you could stand in. I looked at her, my daughter, her mother's perceptiveness layered over my steadiness. Yeah, I think that's right. Are you going to sell it? I thought of the mountains, the gray couch, Sandra's letter. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The insurance investigation wrapped up in October. They called me back to South High, and the kids were unusually decent for teenagers, because they know teachers have lives beyond the classroom. I taught the Gilded Age differently that year, with a new understanding of what it actually takes to build something hidden. The other night, Frank came for dinner. We sat in Sandra's kitchen, with her good pots and her rattling window she always loved. How was the first week? Okay. Better than I expected. He raised his glass. The penthouse still? I'm keeping it. Amber suggested we use it as a base for the family. Sandra would have liked that. You think? Yeah. He nodded. Kev, are you okay? I thought about it. About the key card and the letter and the number on page 3. about Gordon Hale's final silence, and Carla Bryan's folder, about a woman who'd built something incredible in the spaces between her life and handed it all to me with precise trust. I was a 57-year-old history teacher in Washington Park, driving a 10-year-old Subaru, and I owned a penthouse with the best view in Denver. I'd been loved for 29 years by someone so thoroughly she'd arranged for a notary to deliver her love to me 9 days after she died. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Frank raised his glass. I raised mine. We didn't say anything else. Sandra had always loved October in Denver. She said it was the best month because it was honest. Nothing pretending to be warmer than it was. She'd been honest in the end. 29 years of the most interesting person I ever met choosing me. Every single one. That's the whole story. The penthouse is still on the 42nd floor. The view is still extraordinary. And every time I stand in front of it, I think, well done, Sandra. You always were better at the details. If you like this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.